Welcome, everyone. I'm Carolyn Waters, head librarian here at the New York Society Library. We are thrilled to have so many people live and in person here with us tonight for the 26th annual New York City Book Award celebration. And of course, in a particularly pandemic era achievement, at least for us, we are also live streaming the ceremony to an online audience. So hello to everyone joining us tonight. Many of you, I am fairly certain, have only recently become aware of the New York Society Library. And that's a shame, and also a surprise, because we are the oldest library and cultural institute. And I hope that you will agree that that fact alone makes us uniquely qualified to recognize and honor the best books of literary quality or historical importance that evoke the spirit or enhance appreciation of New York City. So I want to congratulate all the winners and who you will hear from tonight. And but before we get started, just a few words of thanks. I really want to express my deep admiration and appreciation for our New York City Book Award jurors, for their time and energy and their dedication, and just considering them reading and considering and deliberating over hundreds of books to settle on these 5 excellent winners. It's quite an achievement. And special thanks also to Bianca Calabresi, this year's jury chair, and to Katie Freakus here in the back. Katie, you should wave to everyone. Who is our staff liaison to the jury. Jenny Lawrence, here in the second row, thank you so much. Jenny makes possible the Hornblower Award, which is now in its 11th year, for the best New York City related book by a first-time author. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Ellen Iseman. Ellen has recently been elected chair of the Board of Trustees of the New York Society Library, though she has been a trustee of the library for many years. We are extraordinarily grateful to her for her long time and generous support of these New York City Book Awards. So thank you, Ellen. Thank you, jury. Thank you, Jenny. And thank you to all the winners.
Thank you, Carolyn, for those lovely remarks, and good evening and welcome. This year's ceremony comes when we're still dealing with a pandemic and witnessing an unforeseen and tragic turn of events in world affairs. In these circumstances, our celebration of gifted authors and their books about our city takes on, at least for me, a special meaning. We're reminded that literature offers vivid expression and evidence of our humanity, and that freedom of expression, a privilege to cherish, is often under assault. With these book awards, we hail our hometown as it strives to spring back to life. Congratulations again to the winners, and deep gratitude to Bianca Calabresi, chair of the jury, and all our other dedicated jurors. They've worked so hard to bring us to this very special occasion. For almost 3 centuries, this library has served as an oasis for members and visitors seeking solace, contemplation, and a quiet place to read and work. We remain an evolving and imaginative cultural institution example of this mission. Thank you all so much for coming.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bianca Calabresi, and it's my great pleasure to chair the committee that selected this year's New York Book Awards winners from the more than 175 books eligible this year. Our jury read diligently from September to April, met monthly over Zoom to discuss the candidates in detail, and spent long hours in thoughtful and animated discussion. As my legendary predecessor, Warren Weissler, said at our last in-person ceremony, ours was a labor of love but a labor nonetheless. He's much funnier than I am, so I just steal his jokes. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge all the labor that went into the organizing and administering of this year's selections before we celebrate the fruits of our talented authors' labors as well. First, our deep thanks to Katie Frucas, Sarah Holliday, and Maria Luisa Monda in events for planning this evening and for so many acts of kindness and professionalism behind the scenes. We are truly appreciative of the circulation staff's constant help in locating, distributing, and indeed, in my case, storing huge piles of the books that must move in and out during the committee's proceedings. Katie, again, presided as overarching genius, linking juror and text with diligent alacrity and generating all the meeting spreadsheets and book mailings that connect us and make our work possible and palatable. I owe a special debt to this year's superb jurors, and I'm going to ask you all to stand up, those of you who are here. Jesse Alvarez, Nikhil Iyengar, Anita Kapadia, Christine Kendall, Tracy Kwan, Jonathan Stoffer, and Justin Zaremby. Let's give them a round of applause. You may be seated. Their extraordinary diligence, expertise, and good humor transformed our scheduled Zoom meetings into the most delightful of book clubs. Their acute close readings deepened our deliberations, and their enthusiasm and grace in the act of choosing our phenomenal finalists made it seem truly a celebration of literary riches. I'm especially grateful to Christine Kendall, who's completing her term on the jury this year. We will miss her so much. Her steadfast, resourceful, brilliant participation, and her generous cheerfulness in the face of challenging logistics has been a model of good judging. Thank you, Christine. None of this would be possible without the wise counsel of head librarian Carolyn Waters and the unstinting support and backing of Ellen Iseman and Jenny Lawrence, whose dedication to the library and to the collective texts that construct and reveal our magnificent New York continue to inspire us to be better readers and better citizens. Thanks to them, and many thanks to you all for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. It is my distinct privilege and pleasure to present tonight's Hornblower Award to Lee Tran for House of Sticks. There are books that illuminate, there are books that inspire, there are books so engaging that you want to just keep on reading, and then there are those rare books like House of Sticks that do all of these things and more. House of Sticks is an engrossing, beautifully written memoir. A delving roman that's utterly transported. When Lee takes her first toddler steps in New York, we, the readers, are there with her. As she arrives with her family from Vietnam during the blizzard of 1993, in her words, from rice paddies, mango trees, and the sun, to February in the Empire State, sick from turbulence and 3 weeks of travel. The journey of Lee and her family, her childhood in Ridgewood, Queens, her coming of age in New York City, is a remarkable, powerful story that touches the heart and mind in that special way that truly special books do. It's a story that reinvigorates words like resilience and self-discovery and gives them a fresh meaning and context. And while memoirs are by definition personal, intimate portraits, Lee's story is universal, for her writing transforms the hyperlocal into the truly global. House of Sticks has already received numerous accolades, including being named one of the best books of the year by NPR and Vogue. Here's an extract from the opening chapter, titled Wait. A din of nervous voices, a shuffle of restless bodies, a dull, bright blue tongue. It was night time. I was hungry, fretful, struggling out of my mother's arms. My father had gone to trade a ceramic bowl for eggs with soy sauce. We sat on narrow, overcrowded benches waiting for him. My senses were just beginning to activate, some more than others. Vision dominated, and smell. I remember the strong odor of eggs drenched in soy sauce as my father entered the tent to carry the food back to us, and the vague presence of blurry, faceless people all around. I don't remember my three brothers being there. I knew only that we were not in a familiar place. And that shock of unfamiliarity is perhaps what has preserved this earliest memory of mine. Sitting on a bench in a tarpaulin tent in a refugee camp in Thailand. I was 3 years old, only vaguely conscious of the world around me, but in that singular moment, it was as though a light had flickered on in the uncharted rooms of my mind. I have no recollection of the moments before, of how I got there, and what came after. But the blue remains. I can almost touch it. A country of blue as big as Antarctica, frozen in the geography of my consciousness. House of Sticks is a landmark book, and on behalf of the jury and the Society Library, I'm honored to present Untitled with this award.
When I was a little girl, I sought in vain to find glimpses of myself in the pages of literature, on the shelves of New York libraries. I wanted desperately to find a story like mine so I could feel less alone, so I could feel like my own story was worth telling and worth believing in. I never thought that years later I would be the one to author my own story, to fill in the gaps, so that others could see themselves in my words. And I certainly never thought that I'd be standing here before you today. I am so deeply appreciative of the opportunity to be able to put Ridgewood, Queens on a literary map. And I couldn't have done it without the kindness and generosity of those who believed in me and in my story. Sarah Levitt, Beth Rashbaum, Valerie Steiker, and Sally Howe, and the wonderful team at Scribner. And thank you so much to the New York Society Library for the honor of this award. To all the jurors who believed in my story, and for celebrating diverse voices in literature. Thank you so much.
What a pleasure it is to be here with Debbie Applegate, the author of Madam, and the biographer of Holly Adler, who was an icon of New York's jazz age. In 2007, after winning the Pulitzer Prize for her first book, The Most Famous Man in America, Debbie Applegate vowed never to write another. Her biography of Henry Ward Beecher was a 20-year project. I can tell you that eyebrows were raised when Debbie compared her rigorous research to crack cocaine. She promised to stay off the stuff. Fortunately, just when she thought she was out, they pulled her back in. Her second book is a compassionate and provocative entry. In 1953, Holly Adler was described as the most famous madam of modern times. She was New York City's underground legend in the 1930s. At the time of her death, in 1962, she had become a household name. Holly was born in Belarus in 1900 arriving at Ellis Island in 1913. For those of us who cut our teeth on a battered second-hand edition of Holly Adler's best-selling memoir, as I did in the 80s, this is the biography and the biographer we've been waiting for. Holly was evasive. She was protective of her past, something we come to expect from a memoirist. But this book is timelier and more relevant than we imagined, due to the role of commercial sex in today's election cycles. Sex work can still be a source of scandal, but we now understand it to be much more than that. During the 2020 presidential primaries, there was good morning, and Kamala Harris spoke up against sex workers. In Brooklyn, a New York state senator was recently elected after calling for full criminalization of sex work. In the language of Holly Adler's film, prostitution. This also came up during our recent memorial election. It is no longer unusual to recognize people in the sex trade as voters and citizens. During Holly Adler's time, this was unthinkable, even though sex workers and minors were essential to the city's economic and cultural growth. It was something people knew and didn't say, because the words of that time had not been untrue or uncovered. Even as they came up. So in the 21st century, we talk about things that people once felt and didn't express. What was it like for a young woman to labor in the erotic shadows and run a successful business in pre-enlightenment New York City? The connections were complicated. If you have not read the book, I won't ruin the surprise, but I suggest page 547. Look up Roosevelt, Franklin. So in the pages of Madam, the author has captured that awkward relationship between written laws and laws of nature. Her focus is on the 1920s and 30s, and on Holly's sweatshop experience during the 1910s, which includes her later career. But we read this biography not only to be immersed in the museum of Holly Adler's Prince Hornblower. We want to understand what we're going through right now. This is a history of New York's commercial sex world that helps us to know ourselves and to forgive the mistakes of the past. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Debbie Applegate.
Well, Tracy has outed me, so I will begin as we always do at these meetings, which is I'm Debbie Applegate and I'm a library addict. So for that reason, it is always lovely to win a prize, but this one meant a tremendous amount to me in the most sentimental ways. The first is because I'm a deep fan of the New York Society Library. I'm a fan of all libraries. It took me 14 years of going to the library day after day after, well, not every single day, but the days I got work done, or the days I went to the library. And I am a fan not only of this particular place, which has always been a spot of great memories and great fellowship as well as scholarship, but particularly those quirky kinds of libraries, the ones that fight against the tide of everything else that wants to steal your attention. I am, in fact, a member of one of your, your rural institutions in New Haven, the New Haven Young Man's Institute Library, much younger than yours, 1853. I guess we should call it a fraternal institution. So first of all, the choice for you to have chosen me means a tremendous amount.
But second of all, the prize. This particular prize means a tremendous amount. If there is a character in my book that mattered more than Polly, that was constantly, in fact, fighting for my attention and trying to grab it away from Polly, it is New York City itself. I could have written this book without Polly. I could just have written about New York City between the two wars, and I could live there in my imagination forever, except for the third reason I'm glad to be here, which is I want to give particular thanks to the three people sitting over there in the front row, which is my agent, Susan Ravender, my longtime editor, Gerald Howard from Doubleday, and my
Brooklyn.
and Brooklyn, two Brooklynites in the house, right here.
Represent.
And my husband, Bruce Tolgan, yeah, exactly. I don't know, does anyone come from Manhattan nowadays? And as I say, they, when I first met them, I was in my very late 20s, and I am no longer in my late 20s. And so, and I should also thank, I took so long with this book that Jerry retired a week and a half after I turned it in. So I should also thank my brand new editor who couldn't be here, Thomas Gebbert, who represents the future of publishing. And so I want to thank everyone here. I want to thank especially you. Thank you, Tracy. That was absolutely, I know you know what you're talking about. Thank you to everyone here. This is a tremendous honor.
I'm Jonathan Sofer, and I'm here to present the award to Brian Burles and Clarence Taylor's Historic Black Brooklyn, 400 Years of Struggle and Hope. There were things about this book that were surprising, and there were things that were not surprising. One of the things that was not surprising was that we were giving an award to Clarence Taylor, whom I only met just now, but whose prolific work on the history of New York City and on the history of African Americans in New York City has informed my teaching of the history of the city at NYU, and particularly last semester when I was teaching at a course in the history of the NYPD. And another thing that was, what was a surprise is that it is unusual for a book of photographs to have such a fine historical narrative accompanying it. This book is a book that you can not only look at, but also read and really learn a significant amount about Black Brooklyn and its neighborhoods over the course of, since colonization. And to do that in a book of photography is really an outstanding achievement. The other thing that is a surprise are the photographs themselves, which are selected and unusual and sometimes literally came out of people's garages. And these photographs show struggle, and they show the pain of racism, but they also show an immense amount of joy, of fun that people are having in the streets of their neighborhood, in the streets of Prospect Heights and Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and Brownsville and other African American neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And that joy and that strength is also an enormous of the people in the neighborhoods of Black Brooklyn. To illustrate that is also an amazing triumph. And so I want to thank you, and please come up, and so I can present the award. Thank you so much for this.
First, I want to thank the New York Society Library for bestowing such a prestigious award to historic Black Brooklyn. I am grateful and humbled by the jurors' decision to include our book among the 3 other wonderful books of this award. The book would not have been possible without the help from others. And I want to thank Susan Spellin and Ricardo Gum for their careful reading of the manuscript and several suggestions that help make the chapters much stronger. I wish to thank my brother, the Reverend Clarence Taylor, right there, thanks my brother, for taking time out of his very busy schedule. He does have a very busy schedule running the church. He has a radio program. So he took time out to read and make terrific recommendations on our sections on Black religious life in Brooklyn. I wish to thank my friend, Professor Gilda Swerman, who spent a great deal of time with the manuscript, suggesting what we should keep in, what we should take out, and knowing Brian on many occasions. But I also want to thank Susan Savone for her wonderful editing of our book. And I want to thank my wife, Marcia, who's also here, for her insightful comments and her skills with technology to help the process of making historic Black Brooklyn. And it's really Marcia who played a pivotal role in our winning this award this evening. To receive this award, as I noted, is truly a great honor and recognition of the scholarship and artistic value of the project. And it is my co-author who I owe a great deal of thanks. Over the last 4 decades, Brian has built one of the largest collections of photos of the men, women, and children who reside in Brooklyn. And for those who know him, he is
the unfortunate ones.
He is a walking encyclopedia of Brooklyn and Brooklyn history. This book was his vision, and I am grateful to him for asking me to join him in this project. You know, they say a photo is worth 1,000 words. The hundreds of photos in historic Black Brooklyn reveal the heart and soul of Black people of this great borough, far better than the thousands of words found in the numerous scholarly books in Brooklyn. And page after page, the reader gets to see the daily routines, the work activities and recreational events, the civic engagements, civil rights and labor protests, and the sports that Black Brooklyn residents were involved. So therefore, I owe the greatest thanks to the photographers who had the great insight to take these photos, and of course the women, children, and men who appear in these photos. Who are unknown to me, many of them, and large numbers of people who will see them, they will be unknown. But thanks to their willingness to be photographed, viewers can appreciate their beauty, significance, and the role that these photos have played in our understanding of historic Black Brooklyn.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for the award. I'm really humbled. This was a tremendous surprise. We put our heads together, a scholar and just an amateur lover of Brooklyn history and old photography that sort of has a lot of Brooklyn facts in my head. And the challenge was weaving these hundreds and hundreds of photos into something coherent. And 2 years remotely, we didn't even see each other in person over 2 years until we had an event in Brooklyn a few months back. Thank you, and I hope you like the book.
It is my pleasure to introduce Harlem Shuffle, the work of our next honoree, Colson Whitehead, even though unfortunately he can't be with us this evening. As many of you may know, Colson Whitehead is a two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Once for the Underground Railroad, which was also the National Book Award winner, and then again for the Nickel Boys. He has written 10 works of fiction and nonfiction and received numerous awards and honors, including MacArthur and Guggenheim fellowships. What Colson Whitehead is not is a man who rests on his laurels and repeats himself. After winning the back-to-back Pulitzers for books dealing with social justice themes, he published something totally different, an ingenious crime novel set in mid-century Harlem. That's Harlem Shuffle. Here's a direct quote from Mr. Whitehead. Write what you don't know. If you know you can write a certain kind of story, why do you want to do it again? Don't write the story you know how to write. Tackle the story you're not sure you can pull off. And it's very fortunate for us that Colson Whitehead has such an expansive range. Now, I said Harlem Shuffle is a crime novel, but it's really a family saga masquerading as a crime novel. It's the story of Ray Carney, who sells used furniture and appliances up on 125th Street. Ray, who had a difficult childhood as a hoodlum son, has managed to marry into an upper middle class family. He tries to walk the straight and narrow, but he has a hard time freeing himself from his criminal roots. Colson Whitehead conveys his protagonist's essence to the reader brilliantly with the book's opening words. Carney was only slightly bent when it came to being Brooklyn. It's a fascinating story about a man navigating a double life. As is his habit with all of his work, Colson Whitehead did meticulous research before writing Harlem Shuffle, and it shows. His densely layered rendering of New York City jumps off the page, and it is simply a joy to read. We thank Colson Whitehead for his excellent work, and will now share a brief video with you.
Hey, howdy do. I'm Colson Whitehead. I wanted to thank the New York Society Library for recognizing Harlem Shuffle. I finished the book 2 years ago this month, during the first wave of the lovely Corona pandemic. And I remember at the time there were all these articles about New York is dead, New York's not coming back. And we always come back, whether it's from a war with the British or yellow fever or a fire that burns all of downtown or a terrorist attack or this epidemic. There's a resiliency that I hope I captured in Harlem Shuffle. And I hope that you are feeling now as you do your own bit to revitalize the city and bring it back, not to its former glory, but to its next wonderful stage. So thanks again for putting me in such wonderful company. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.
Hello again, or for those of you who are late, I am Bianca Calabresi. And it's my great honor and delight to be introducing Charles George Esperanza, aka C.G. Esperanza, aka Chalaranza, whose Boogie Boogie Y'all is one of the outstanding winners of this year's New York Book Awards and the last award that we're presenting tonight. You should know, among other things, you should know that C.G. Esperanza is an Odyssey Award winner and the Florida Prey and Grace Name Honor winner. So this is not his first rodeo, but it's his first time here at the New York Society Library being honored, and we're very grateful to him for his book and also for this opportunity. I should also say, before I start talking about the book, that C.G. Esperanza is an artist, first and foremost, who works in multiple media. And it might not be obvious unless you read closely how complex the making of these images are. They are digital illustrations, but as he says, in very small print in the front, they're created by oils, acrylic, and Photoshop. I had to bring my copy because it is just an extraordinary physical book. It's got elongated pages, and I opened it exactly where I wanted to. Do 90-degree shifts in orientation. So this is a book in the broadest sensory mode. You can read it in its gorgeous Italian-produced hardbound text. You can read along and listen with the author in audio or on video. You can watch the musical with his nephew Ian starring, who's also starring in the book, on YouTube with changing real-life backgrounds as free art. I suggest that you read it in every possible medium, as it functions beautifully in all instantiations. Not the least as an old-fashioned hold-in-your-hand picture book where you can unfurl the flaps and examine the spreads like subway cars passing by. There's lots to look at and for in this book of and about visual culture and its context. As two kids and a dog notice the art on the wall, on the train, in the park, on the block, while others are too busy in their New York minute to appreciate the gallery unfurling around them. So read it a second time and catch the sly references to wild style and graffiti artists of the 80s, including Herring, Scharf, and Moscow. Read it a third time and search for the artist's name, borough of origin, and signature outfits, as well as a host of pigeons, a small, fierce hip-hop artist with puffs, and a number of clever, otherworldly, overlapping phrases and details. Before I end, I want to say I didn't realize while I was sitting here that we have given our awards this year represent 4 of the 5 boroughs. And that is entirely an accident. I guess if we planned it, Staten would be here. And we have given awards to the other Staten Islands. Wonderful works that have come across our desks and sofas. But I just need to say this is the book from the Bronx. And it is very much a book about and celebrating the Bronx. Wait, I'm not done. In an interview, the late, great Robert Ferris Thompson linked the English language boogie to the Kikongo boogie, meaning devilishly good. Boogie Boogie Y'all displays its collective festivity, sophistication, and wit with virtuoso ease. It invites us into boogie, and is indeed boogie, devilish and good. Join the party and be in congratulating CBS.
That was an amazing introduction. Wow, that was really good. I love that. Wow, this is such an honor. I did win a couple ALA awards, but this is the first award show for a book that I've ever been to, so this is very, very meaningful for me. And I have to thank my amazing agent, Marianne Zacher, for making this happen. My incredible editor at HarperCollins, Mabel Sue, and my amazing mother. I want to tell you all the story of how I was inspired to create Boogie Boogie Y'all. I had to write it down. I remember once seeing a tree painted on a wall. Half the leaves were spring green and half red or fall. It grew from the head of a brown boy holding the sun, while birds flew around with rainbows and butterflies having fun. I said, this is gorgeous. But before I could say more, my friend said, first comes the art, then comes the apple stones. But I could have sworn there was art there before. way before Starbucks, back in '94. We chipped away the painting of this marvelous tree. Chip, peel, scrape. Finally, we could see. Giant, colorful bubble letters. What do they spell? Is it bomb, morp, or brimp? We really couldn't tell. Kids, check out the art. It says bomb for work or there. The colors were fantastic, highlights and blended with care. My uncle yelled out the window, that joint was made in '83 by some kid with a fro. It was as big as a tree. Thank you so much, y'all.
Well, I want to say this was really, really wonderful. And again, so great to have everybody back here in the members' room for the New York City Book Awards, where it should be. So thank you again, the jurors. An amazing year, and gonna gear up for next year. We'll give you a month or so. Thank you to the winners. Thank you to Ellen and to Jenny again, and to Katie and Sarah and Mary Lou orchestrating this event. And thank you to all of you guys here for coming out and supporting the New York City Book Awards.